So in today's video, I'm going to walk you through 10 essential Linux commands that will save your day when things go wrong. We've all been there. The system won't boot, a program keeps crashing, or something just doesn't feel right. Whether you're a beginner or a pro, I think these Linux commands are must-haves in your troubleshooting toolkit. These are the commands that you can use to fix any problem. So let's dive in. So first off, let's talk about the dmesg command, which is for kernel messages. This provides a direct look at kernel messages, which are generated by the core of your OS. These logs include information about hardware events, system startup, and device errors. It's often the first place to check when something isn't working right, like a USB device failing to mount, or whatever it may be. And what you can do is you can run the dmesg command, type that with tail, and with this, what we can do is that we can look at the latest messages in here. Now, in fact, what I should do is I should put sudo at the start here because otherwise it won't run. I may have to enter my password. No, we're all good. So there we go. Now we are seeing some error messages from the dmesg kernel message command. So if you are troubleshooting, having this command handy is a great first place to check if something doesn't feel quite right. Next, let's talk about the journalctl command for system logs. This pulls logs from the system MD journal, offering a comprehensive view of what's happening on your system. It's invaluable for diagnosing errors, crashes, and service failures. And with the XE flag, we can show recent logs with detailed error context, making it a bit easier to pinpoint the source of any issues. So what we have to do is run the command. So it's journalctl XE flag, throw this up, and we can see what we see. And there we go. We can see some ACPI errors. Something Tor has been idle. So essentially, this is an excellent place to start. If again, you're looking for some issues with errors, crashes, or service failures, journalctl for system logs is somewhere where you should be heading over. You can have a look at timestamps, error descriptions, and essentially interpret what is going on within these logs. When you want to get out, Control-C will exit, and I will clear the screen. Next up, let's talk about the htop command to monitor system resources. Now, htop is an interactive real-time resource monitor. Helps you visualize CPU and memory usage and see which processes are consuming resources. And that also helps you to quickly identify issues like high load or unresponsive applications. What we have to do is enter the htop command, and there we go. And this is lovely. If you've ever used top in the past, this is a more interactive version of that. It's very colorful, really helpful, and it's a great way to visualize what is going on with your system. So for instance, if you were to use a CPU intensive task, you could have a look and see how much is hogging your resources. And you could obviously, of course, find that and then kill that process if it was taking up too much of your consumer resources. So again, Control-C to exit, and we are now out of that command. So now let's talk about PS with the AUX flag. And this is obviously for viewing and running processes. Now this lists all active processes, showing details like their PID, the CPU usage, memory consumption, and user ownership. So it's essential for verifying if a service is running or if a process is consuming excessive resources. You can also pipe it to grep with Apache, for instance, if I want to search for a specific process, which in this case would be Apache. Obviously, you could search for whatever process you are interested in, but in this case, let's try that. We're going to have PS with AUX. We're going to pipe to grep, and we're looking for Apache, hit run, and we can now see all of the running Apache processes. So again, it depends on what you want to look for. You can use grep to narrow the search, or you can have a wider net if you're not sure what you're looking for to begin with. But PS with the AUX and obviously piping to grep is a fantastic tool that most system admins will be very familiar with, and it's one of those tools you have to have in your arsenal. So now let's talk about the strace or strace command to trace system calls. So what does this do? This shows the system calls that a process is making, offering a behind-the-scenes look at what it's doing. This is incredibly useful for debugging programs that are hanging or failing, as it reveals what the process is waiting on and where it's encountering issues. Now, of course, what I have done to get ready for this is I've started a bit of a nonsense process. I've used the cat command to send random bytes to dev null. And I'm going to trace this now. And what you're going to see is an endless stream of nonsense, which is random bytes being streamed to the dev null. And it's just to give an idea of how you can look at the real-time streaming of what is going on behind the scenes. So in order to find that, first of all, I'm going to use PS and AUX, and I'm going to grep and look for cat. And I'm going to find, and you can see this command down here when I'm catting to dev urandom. So I'm sending random bytes to dev null. So this has this PID. So I'm going to copy that, clear the screen. It's a bit messy. And now we're simply going to use sudo strace p flag. Here is PID. We hit go and be prepared for an endless stream of garbage. And there we go. That is what being streamed, random bytes being streamed to a black hole. But of course, if you're doing something more meaningful and you're looking at a particular process, you can figure out what is going on, what is happening behind the scenes, and whether it's getting stuck or hung. I'm going to stop that now because it is absolutely mental. So we'll clear that off. And that's why you need to use the strace command. So now we can talk about the LSOF, which is to list open files. So this shows files that are currently open by processes, including network connections and ports that are in use. It's a great tool for diagnosing locked files, hanging network connections, or figuring out which application is holding up a resource. And all you have to do is enter LSOF. I'm going to add the I flag, and we're going to list processes using network connections. And now this is a really great way to figure out what is happening. I hit enter, and now we can see. And again, depending on what you're looking for and depending on what you're expecting to find, the output here is going to depend upon your intentions. But knowing how to use this to figure out which files are being opened by processes and network connections and ports is a great way for troubleshooting or figuring out if things are working as you'd expect. Now, this is probably a bit simple, but it is an essential command all the same, and it's ping to test network connectivity. Of course, ping sends ICMP packets to a remote host, measures the response time, allowing you to test connectivity and identify network latency. Of course, ping is a request for a response. So one of the first commands we all learn when learning about networking and getting involved with computers, especially when you start working the command line. I remember the first time that I learned to use ping many years ago and being quite fascinated by it at the time. But essentially, we could ping something really simple like google.com, and then we can have a look at the response and expect to get something back. So there we go. We can now see the ICMP sequence, the TTL, and the time. So ultimately, this is showing a working connection with response times. And if we wanted to get more detailed, we could use this to figure out if there are any network or DNS issues or anything that might be preventing connectivity to a remote host. So ping is a simple command, but a powerful command for troubleshooting issues with network connectivity to remote hosts. And we can stop this with Control-C, and I'm going to clear that because now the screen is full. Okay, let's now talk about SS for network statistics. Now this lists open sockets, network connections, and listening ports, offering faster and I'd say more detailed output than its predecessor, netstat. So we can simply run the SS command with the T flags, and this will show active listening ports. So if, for instance, I've got something like Apache listening, I could highlight columns and look for ports, protocols, and states related to that, depending on what I'm trying to figure out. Ultimately, it depends on what your intentions are. Network statistics are going to depend upon what your network goals are and what you're trying to figure out with the network. But again, when it comes to troubleshooting, using SS is one of those commands you need to have on hand. So I can run this right now and we can have a look at everything that is going on. So again, this may not mean a tremendous amount because what is the purpose? You have to have a purpose for using these commands, but knowing that you can use this to list open sockets, network connections, and to looking for listening ports rather, is a great way for troubleshooting when you're talking about network connectivity. So we'll clear that and move on. Now, this is again a fairly simple command, but another one that you should really always remember, and is the df command, which displays disk usage for each file system. This is really helpful for troubleshooting if you want to identify if you've got some low space issues or you haven't even realized you've got low space issues, because this could impact system performance or application behavior. And we can also use the H flag for human readable output. So essentially, very basic, but as a system admin, one of those troubleshooting commands you should always have at the front of your mind to figure out if there's something going on. Maybe I'm running low on disk space. I can quickly run df with H, have a look and see what's available and what is being used. Super simple, but very powerful. And wrapping up, we can talk about the Uptime command, which is essentially your system uptime. And this shows how long the system has been running and provides load averages for the past 1, 5, and 15 minutes. And this can help you diagnose whether your system is overwhelmed. So for instance, I can run the Uptime command right now, and there we can see our load averages as well as the uptime. So 1.00 equals 1 fully utilized core. So anything above that is obviously more utilized cores. And essentially, this is a great way to measure system stability. And what I would suggest is that whilst it seems like a simple command, familiarize yourself with the output and understand what the different readings are. You could even try and run some computationally expensive tasks and then have a look how your load averages adjust with those intensive tasks, to have an understanding of how these values adjust depending on what you're doing on the system. And that way, when you are troubleshooting and using the Uptime command, you'll understand the output that much better. So there you have it, 10 essential Linux commands for troubleshooting any problem. Whether you're facing network issues, hunting down resource hogs, digging into system logs, I think these tools have basically got you covered. Of course, there's a lot more that you can learn about each tool and really become a ninja and understand the nuances and intricacies of each of these commands. But hopefully, I think that you will agree that these are really helpful commands and they are great commands to have in your toolkit. So as always, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.